Hi guys, I'm Andrea. Welcome to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be doing my Latinx-a-thon wrap up. I read a lot of great books and I finished all the ones that I wanted to read, so I wanted to talk a little bit about those, and I have some new favorites that I'm really excited to share. So the first book I read for Latinx-a-thon is actually Beast Girl and Other Origin Myths by Elizabeth Acevedo. This was published in 2016, and it's a very tiny poetry collection. It is only 33 pages long, 31 if you're not counting the acknowledgement page. But as you can see, I, tabbed a bunch of little spots there because there's a lot of great content in here. I'm a really big fan of how she writes poetry. She's just so goddamn good. But anyways, this is a combo of Dominican origin myths fused with like the realities of being a first-gen Afro-Latinx person in the US. And one thing that I noticed throughout most of these poems, that it's about finding strength in feminine Dominican mythological figures that kind of have found their own strength through pain, which I thought was interesting to read. And it's also deals with like coming of age and sexuality within here. One of my favorite poems is called Dominican Superstitions. It's right here. And I really enjoyed this book, this poem, because it kind of, in a way, summarizes what a lot of the poems in this chapbook talk about, which is like, the difference between being part like Dominican but also American and relating to both cultures, but then separating yourself from them, and like there's just like this inherent difference. I like how in Dominican Superstitions it talks about ghosts, because I think in Latin America like superstitions and ghosts and creepy crawly things is such like a giant part of culture, there's always a folktale, there's always like the aunt that met a ghost and learned this and that, there's always the aunt that can talk to the dead, you always hear those kind of stories and you kind of grow up with that being the norm. So I kind of really enjoyed how that was explored in this one. This is a really great read if you are a fan of Elizabeth. That's an airplane noise, by the way. If you're a fan of her writing, I mentioned this in my Latinx-a-thon vlog about how reading this chapbook actually really helped me understand Poet X a little bit more, because in Poet X, that book is semi-autobiographical. And what I meant by that is that in Poet X, Xiomara, who is the main character there, she kind of deals with growing into her own body and growing into her own womanhood. And I think that this book explores that concept really well as well. So definitely check it out if you can find it. I know it's a little bit difficult to find online. Going off that topic of first gen and trying to come into your own being, the next book I read was A Cup of Water Under My Bed, a memoir. This is by Daisy Hernandez. She is really influenced by Sandra Cisneros, and this book, I think any first generation child of an immigrant or immigrant themselves will relate to Daisy's journey through this book. It's kind of about learning, leaving, and returning to Spanish and Latinx heritage. Throughout this book, the cultural anchor was Spanglish. A lot of it has to do with the language itself. And I bookmarked a couple of places where she really explained it in a way that felt so relatable. And I haven't really read something like that before in books. There's a passage in this book where she talks about how in Spanish it's really common to add the ITA or ITO to the end of words, so ita or ito. And it can make even a hostile word into one of like cariño, how do you say it? Endearment, there you go. So here it says, a skinny woman becomes la flaquita, a small woman turns into la chiquita, a house too small for a family of 6 becomes la casita. And then she says, this is what I admire about my people, about our language. We believe there is a way to love what bruises. And I had never really thought about that before, but it's entirely true. And that's something that I really enjoyed throughout this memoir in particular. I feel like her journey with language is one that I kind of share with it as well. And I had never really seen that like represented. In this book, we learn a lot about her family. Her father practices Santeria, She is Colombian and Cuban, by the way. But throughout the novel, one of the main points is that she doesn't really discover who her parents really are until she gets older. You know, she didn't really ask questions about their past, and she didn't really question things in their house because she just thought that's how things always were. And I think that really explains a first-gen child of an immigrant experience as well. I know you grow up and things are just the way they are, you know, you don't question certain elements in your household, and you don't question the past because it's in the past. And when you do it when you're like older, or you begin to connect dots when you're older. This is also a book about her queer awakening. Daisy is a bisexual woman, and it's kind of about not fitting into that immigrant parent expectations, specifically, or family expectations, specifically with her aunt. Her aunt really rejects her for dating a woman, and she only accepts her when she's dating a man, and she kind of has to weave her way through life trying to hide this other part of herself. But throughout the book, she really learns how to provide space for herself to grow and be the person that she always has been freely. Another aspect of this book that I related to was about placing internalized pressures on yourself for success, because I feel that when you're a child of an immigrant, you know that they sacrificed so much, or your family sacrificed so much for that American dream, and that's you, and you have to be successful because there is so much like pain and blood behind you that you need to like push through that barrier and make that sacrifice worthwhile. So I think that Daisy really struggles with that within this book. She works for the New York Times for a section of this book as a journalist, but she's still really deeply unhappy. Even though she has all this external success, it's something that she does not feel passionate about in the way that she wants to, at least. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. I mean, I think I can definitely relate to that. Okay, I had to stop for a quick second because I got hot Cheetos. The next book I read was my favorite read of the entire readathon, and it's one that really stuck to my heart. I still think about it constantly. I literally gave this book to my dad so he could read it because I needed somebody to talk, because the content in this book, oh my god. The book I'm talking about is Anthea Ana by Sara Uribe. She's a Mexican author. This book was originally written in Spanish. My copy has the Spanish on one side. Can you see? Yeah, the Spanish on one side, the English on the other. I read both side by side. It was really interesting actually to read that like this, just to see the difference in translation, and if there was a particular word I really couldn't understand well on the Spanish side, I had the English there to help me along the way. So I liked about this. Originally this book was commissioned for a play. This was performed on a theater on a big stage, and it reads like a really long poem. I think on the stage it's actually like a very long monologue. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and it's one of my new favorite reads of all time actually. And it's about Anthea Ana Gonzalez, whose brother Tadeo goes missing in Tamaulipas, Mexico, and it's about her frustration with the government's indifference about his disappearance. We learn more about the circumstances of his death as the book progresses, and a lot of it deals with her own grief and her perseverance and desperation in finding her brother, or at least his body. It's really haunting. Like I said, it sticks to you. There's the content, the plot of what this book is about is horrific. It's terrifying and it's real. That's what makes it profound, I believe. As the book progresses, we find out that Anthea Ana's brother was part of the 2011 San Fernando massacre, which happened in Tamaulipas, Mexico, and it was a mass murder of 193 people. There was a series of hijackings of passenger buses by a cartel, and they were forced to fight to the death with one another, gladiator style. They were given weapons, and the winner was recruited to be a hitman for that cartel. All the bodies were buried in 47 mass graves. Anthea Ana's brother Tadeo was one of those people. And what makes this book even more, I guess, impactful is that it is kind of scattered with actual quotes and actual newspaper phrases from 2011 tragedy. So there's like real phrases in here that are just like heartbreaking to read. So at the end, in the author's note, it kind of explains to the reader how the book was constructed and how it relates to Sophocles' Antigone. So the author says, I'm just gonna read it. The author says that Antigone could not bear the dictate of Creon to leave her brother's dead body exposed and buried on a dusty plain. In this version, Antigona Gonzalez is bereft of a body to mourn, a body to bury. This Antigona says, will you join me in taking up the body? So this is the main question that kind of propels the entire story. And it's a question that she asks of the readers, and we arrive to stand in the place of the sister in the original one. So now I'm going to read a few passages that really made me want to cry. What thing is the body when someone strips it of a name, a history, a family name? That there was a chance, when there is no face or trail or traces or signs, that they were going to bring me here. What thing is a body when it's lost? And interwoven between Antigona's kind of journey in finding her brother, there are certain pages that have the history of previous interpretations of Antigone in Latin America. And in the author's note, she says that how in Latin America, the interpretation of Antigone has always been political, and it's always been one of grief because of the brutal violence that happens in Latin America. And he talks about different interpretations, like from Brazil and Cuba. So if you have a chance to read this book, which I definitely recommend, really check out the author's note. It's very informative of how everything in this book is like really carefully constructed. So in the last kind of 40 pages of the book, the format changes into the format changes, and it's kind of like the questionnaire people are given to identify dead bodies. And instead of Sara Uribe speaking through the poetry, it's actual answers from people who had to identify bodies or had to be interviewed to identify bodies in Tamaulipas. For example, this question says, was the body naked or dressed for a journey? And the answer is in italics, and it says, we are about to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. We had everything ready for the party. And this is an actual quote from somebody that lost somebody during this massacre. Something I also really appreciated about this book is that the translator actually has an author's note as well, and he talks about his kind of connection to the subject and why it really mattered to him to get a correct translation and one that is accurate. And he says, why write the story of one absent body? Why translate the story of one absent body? How does the story of one absent body travel? What does translating the story of one absent body create? What might translating the story of one absent body obscure? Might it create another level of absence for an already absent body? What does it mean to know about this one absent body now? Can the absence of this one absent body be felt? Can the absence of the stories of all the other bodies be felt? How much does one absent body weigh? Yeah, it deals with a really heavy subject, and it's really dark, and it's depressing, but it's one of my favorite reads of this. It's my favorite read of this readathon. It's one of my favorite reads of this year, probably. I really recommend checking out a copy if you can get it to it. I know it's hard to get as well. The next book I read was Dear Haiti, Love Alaine. I do not have a physical copy of this book, but I do have postcards because I pre-ordered it. And it comes with like a little cool author's note. This is what the cover of it looks like. It's a really beautiful cover, actually. It has pictures of some landmarks in Haiti. Like this has recipes from some of the dishes that were made in the novel. Here's more of Haiti. Got this one. Got this one. We got one with a quote. The quote says, now that I know where I've been, I know where I'm going, which is one of the biggest themes within the book, actually. And then one more recipe card for one of the dishes in there. And hopefully I can actually make these sometime soon. I think that would be a cool video. Anyways, so in Dear Haiti, Love Alaine is written by two sisters, which is really cool. It's about Alaine, who is like this high school age daughter of a very high profile news reporter, TV news reporter named Celeste. And she's a really giant workaholic, the mom is, who has no time really to spend with her daughter. So Alaine kind of grows up or lives with her dad most of the time. And at the start of this book, both of them make this mistake that kind of leads them to kind of take a break and go into hiding to Haiti, where their family's from. This entire time before Haiti, Elaine's mother, Celeste, has kind of been acting weird, off, aloof. And Alaine discovers, also this is a spoiler alert, so if you don't want to find out one of the main things that kind of sparks this entire book, stop listening now and skip to this time here. Alaine discovers that her mom is diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. She is in her early 40s, and it's something that really surprises Alaine and hits her in a way that she did not expect, because her mother is someone that's very well educated, very well read, just very strong and stern, and I don't want to say cold, but reserved, I guess is a better word. So she's kind of in disbelief and shock. In Haiti, a lot of it is about how Alaine has to kind of learn about her mom's past in order to save her future. So Alaine, like I said, she's in disbelief that her mom has Alzheimer's, so she learns about a curse that was supposedly placed on her mom and her mom's sister and her friends and stuff when they were teenagers, when they were Elaine's age. So it kind of becomes like this Hail Mary effort to kind of save her mom and rid her of this horrible disease, is see if she can beat the curse, break the curse, and have all this stuff just disappear away. I really do believe it's like about the motherland, about motherhood, and about bonds. You know, bonds between a mother and a child, and then bonds between a land and its children. So land being Haiti, its children being Alaine and her mother, and kind of how they've distanced themselves from Haiti, but being back in Haiti really reminds them about everything that they should be trying to preserve. The next book I read was Fever Dream, and this is an Argentinian writer, Samantha Schweblin. This book, oh my god, I barely turned it in today to the library, and it was a month overdue, but my librarian came through and she canceled all my late fees. I really enjoyed this book, actually. I thought it was really eerie, atmospheric. I enjoyed kind of like this ecological disaster, fog, thriller story that it was trying to tell. And there's like this certain like element of like creepiness throughout it. I don't know how else, it just, for me, this book felt like walking through mist, if that makes sense. You kind of don't know what's in front of you. You're taking that step out of confidence, but you don't really know anything about your surroundings. I'm going off topic. Anyways, I enjoyed the energy that this book exuded, but I will mention this. So I read this book near the end of my readathon, and I was getting burnt out, and I will be the first to admit that I did not read this as closely as I should have been reading it. I did not read it in the way it was probably intended to read. I stopped and started a lot of it. So the last book I read was actually a group book for Latinx Lit Takeover, and that was The Gravekeeper by Alexandra Viasante. It was also the group book for Latinx Book Bingo and Latinx Book Club. We actually did a Q&A with Alex, the author, over on our Twitter at Latinx-a-thon. If you want to check out some great questions that she answered, she had amazing answers. Definitely check that out if you want to get a little bit more context on some of the things this book touched on. This book is about Marisol and Gabi, who are sisters from El Salvador, who want to seek asylum in the US. So they escape, but things do not turn out the way that they hoped it would. They're kind of stuck in this detention camp in the US. And days are starting to blur. They're not getting the help they want. They're not treated very well. And they decide to escape the detention camp and make a run for it. Upon them kind of escaping, they're discovered by this US government agent lady who offers them a deal. She asks Marisol to participate in this secret government experiment where she would be taking on the grief of someone else, people that have experienced PTSD, and transferring it to another person. So she would be taking on the grief of somebody else and keeping it as her own, and this would grant her asylum status and let her stay in the US and not go back to El Salvador. And while it's presented as a choice, it's honestly not really a choice. She's at the mercy of a really strange person in a strange country that she has to or desperately wants to stay in because she cannot go back. And so she accepts. So they're taking to this like very bougie, fancy estate where she meets Ray, who is the girl whose grief she will be taking. Ray's brother died in this concert bombing accident that she was also at. And she really deals with a lot of PTSD from it and depression, and she's had a few like suicide attempts. So Marisol will be taking away her grief as her own. Their relationship kind of develops into this like queer sapphic romance. I think that the themes in this book are really timely, and it's an important conversation about immigration and the trauma that leads people to leave their countries, and not only that, but the trauma that people experience once they are on stateside. It kind of deals with like inherited trauma, mental health, violent acts of homophobia, and that's where I think most of the book's strengths lie in, when it deals with immigration and kind of using brown bodies for the government's own benefit. I think it has really strong descriptions and conversations and themes about that. I really enjoyed all the conversations it creates in your mind and a lot of questions. And yeah, what books did you enjoy for Latinx-a-thon or Latinx Heritage Month? What are your favorites? What are some books that surprised you? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.